Welcome to Learn This Game, where you can learn about tabletop games and how they are played. In this presentation, we'll be looking at Stalingrad, Advance to the Volga, 1942. In this video, there'll be a general description and overview of the game. We'll inventory the components, and we'll go through gameplay, including setup, one sample turn, and victory conditions. There are helpful links in the description as well as a timestamp index. If you want to go straight to the setup and gameplay, you can go to the timestamp index now. And if you find this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. You can also leave a comment to share your experience or let us know what game you'd like to see reviewed. Your participation really does help the channel continue to grow and provide more content. Stalingrad, Advance to the Volga 1942, was first co-published by Revolution Games and Take Aim Designs in 2023 and was designed by Rinella. In this solitaire historical war game set in World War II, you control the German Sixth Army attempting to capture Stalingrad, defended by the Soviet 62nd Army. This game is recommended for ages 14 and older. The difficulty level is low to moderate, and each game takes about 2 to 3 hours to play. The game is intended for solo gamers. There are no additional rules for multiplayers. An app is not required, and there are no official apps available for this game. Stalingrad is the first game in the Solitaire Area Movement series. The second volume is Rinella, The Savage Streets 1945, which focuses on the battle between the US and Japanese forces in the Philippines at the end of World War II. More games are expected to be published for this series. Now that you've seen a brief introduction to the game, let's get into the game itself. This is a solitaire, area control, historical war game using a mounted map, counters, and dice. Thematically, the game is based on the German invasion of Stalingrad between September 13 and September 30, 1942 during World War II. There is also an optional scenario to play through October 1942 as well. Now let's see how the game is won. The mounted map depicts the city of Stalingrad, where combat took place between September 13 and September 30, 1942, between the Germans and the Soviets. The map is divided into 50 numbered locations called areas. As the player controlling the German army, you win an automatic victory if at the end of any combat phase, every area on the map is controlled by the Germans. The Soviets win an automatic victory if German morale is 0 at the end of any combat phase. If an automatic victory has not been achieved by the final turn of the game, which for the basic game is turn 9, the German player wins an operational victory if they control at least one heavy urban area and 40 out of the 50 areas on the map. Now let's look at the components. This game includes one 16-page color rulebook, one 17 by 22-inch mounted map divided into 50 areas, where 1 inch equals 800 meters, one sheet of 5/8-inch die-cut counters, one double-sided player aid, and 4 red and 4 black 6-sided dice. Now let's set up the game for our sample playthrough. First, we unfold and place the map in the play area. We place the double-sided player aid card nearby. This aid will provide helpful information, such as the initial unit setup, the sequence of play, and combat tables. We also place the 8 dice nearby. There are 3 steps in the setup stage: marker placement, German unit setup, and Soviet unit setup. We start the marker placement by placing the turn marker on the 1 space on the turn track. We then place the German morale marker on the 19 space of the morale track with a strong side facing up. Morale may increase or decrease during the random event phase, the combat phase, or the end phase. If German morale is reduced to 9 or less, we must flip the marker to its shaken side. Morale boxes numbered 9 to 0 are shaded gray as a reminder. Morale greater than 19 is treated as 19 and less than 0 as 0. We place the supply markers on the 0 space on the record track. The German Control 1 marker is placed on the 9 space of the record track, and the Control 10 marker is placed on the 0 space. The 9 space on the record track indicates that the Germans start the game controlling 9 areas on the map. Finally, we place the air, artillery, and engineer support markers in the used support units box. Now we start the German unit setup. Let's review the German unit types. There are 2 types of German units. The first is armor. Armor units are distinguished by their vehicle illustrations. When an army unit is out of action, it costs 2 supply points to return to play. The second type is infantry, which may be recognized by their NATO infantry symbols. When out of action, it costs 1 supply point to return to play. Each unit has a fresh side and a spent side. A spent unit may not move or attack. The fresh side has the following information: the divisional color, the parent organization, the attack factor, the movement factor, and the setup location, which is the numbered area on the map. The player aid shows the German setup by area. The Germans start the game controlling 9 areas, and all German units start fresh side up. For example, we are shown which German units to place in Area 1. Each area is separated by solid black lines and is considered adjacent to another area if they share a common boundary allowing units to move directly from one to another. The top half of this circle shows the area number, and the gray indicates this is an area initially under German control. We then place the designated German units fresh side up in the area. Now we have to locate areas 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the left side of the board, and areas 48, 49, and 50 at the top of the board. We then place the appropriate German units fresh side up in each space per the setup instructions. These are the 9 areas occupied by the Germans at the start of the game. German units marked T2 and T7 in their upper right corners are reinforcements that enter play during turn 2 and turn 7 respectively. To complete the German unit setup, we place the German reinforcements in the turn 2 and turn 7 boxes. We will now set up the Soviet units. First, we remove the Pavlov's house counter from play. This is not used in the basic game. Each Soviet unit has an unrevealed and revealed side. The unrevealed side is color-coded and indicates the terrain type. The revealed side shows the defense strategy and the defense factor. There are 4 color-coded terrain types. We must separate the units into the 4 terrain types and then shuffle them in their own groups. We will then draw them randomly and place 1 counter, unrevealed side up, in each area whose identifier corresponds to its terrain type. The clear markers are placed with the round identifiers, elevated markers with the triangles, light urban markers with the squares, and heavy urban markers with the pentagons. The top half of each identifier shows the area number, and the red indicates the area is initially under Soviet control. The bottom half contains that area's terrain effects modifier, which is used when resolving attacks against the Soviet units in this area. After shuffling the Soviet units unrevealed side up, we first place the clear terrain units, then the elevated units, followed by the light urban units, and finally the heavy urban units. We are now ready to start the game. Now let's see how the game is played. We will play 1 sample turn in order to demonstrate the sequence of play. We will not be using any optional rules. The sequence of play can be found on the player aid and on the board. 1 turn consists of these 5 phases. The game is 9 turns long and covers the first 18 days of the Battle of Stalingrad from September 13 to September 30, 1942, so each turn represents about 2 days. Turns 10 through 14 on the board are used with the optional factory district scenario. So we now begin turn 1 with the dawn phase. The dawn phase consists of reinforcements and withdrawals. We will receive reinforcements on turns 2 and 7. These will include the units we placed here during the game setup. There is 1 mandatory withdrawal during the game which takes place during the dawn phase on turn 9. At that time, we must remove from play the 4 units of the 29th Motorized Division. Since turn 1 does not include any reinforcements or withdrawals, we can proceed to the random event phase. During the random event phase, we consult the random event chart, which can also be found on the player aid. During this phase, we roll 3 dice and consult this chart. There is a special rule for turn 1 only that instructs us to treat these 4 items as no result. We roll 3 dice, resulting in 12. For this turn, the Soviet defense values will be increased by 1 in every area where combat occurs. Next is the supply phase. At the beginning of the supply phase, we roll 4 dice and consult the German supply cost table. which can be found on the player aid or the board. We keep track of our supply points on the record track. We rolled a total of 11, so we would place our supply point markers on the record track. However, there is one special roll remaining for turn 1, which allows us to treat a supply roll under 16 as 16. We then place our supply markers on the record track indicating 16 supply points. And during each supply phase, we receive one air support marker that is placed in the available support units box. We can then spend our supply points to purchase support units for artillery, engineer, or air support, return an infantry or armor unit to play from the out-of-action box, or increase German morale by 1. Since our morale cannot exceed 19 and we have no units out of play, we can purchase support units. We will spend 8 supply points to purchase one more air support marker and 5 artillery support markers. We place the support markers in the available support units box and adjust the record track to show that we have 8 supply points remaining. Unused supply points may accumulate from turn to turn and can be used during future supply phases. Support units not used this turn are also saved for later turns. We are now ready for the combat phase. The combat phase is made up of action rounds, during each of which the German player may activate a single area on the map containing fresh units to move and/or attack. The combat phase ends when all German units are spent or the German player declines to activate additional areas. At the end of the combat phase, we also check to see if there has been an automatic victory. A maximum of 4 German units may occupy a single area. German support markers for air, artillery, and engineers do not count against stacking limits. Only one Soviet unit may be stacked in an area at any given time. Also, it is important to note that Soviet units never move in this game. German units may not move into, attack, or end a retreat in an area already stacked to the maximum, though the Germans may retreat through a fully stacked area. Each area is always controlled by either the German player or the Soviet side. An area containing a Soviet unit is always Soviet controlled. Control changes when the German side has a German unit in a vacant area previously controlled by the Soviet side. An area is contested if it contains units of both sides. Contesting an area that is controlled by the Soviet side does not alter control of that area. An area is vacant if it contains no Soviet units. A vacant area is always controlled by the Germans. German-controlled markers are placed in areas that are German-controlled. We will now start the first action round. At the start of each combat phase, we review the map to determine if a bloody streets situation exists. We must roll 1 die on the bloody streets table found on the player aid for each area that is contested in light urban and heavy urban areas. Since there are no such contested areas, we then proceed to determine which areas we want to activate. An active area must contain at least 1 fresh unit, and we may activate any number of fresh units in that area. We will refer to the movement costs table on the player aid when moving our units. We will first activate Area 1 and move all 4 units into Area 29. Per the movement cost table, each unit will need 4 movement factors to enter an area containing an unrevealed Soviet unit. The elevated identifier shows this is Area 29, initially controlled by the Soviets at the beginning of the game. The terrain effects modifier shows we will add +2 to the Soviets' defense value. German units must make a mandatory attack whenever they enter a Soviet-occupied area that was not contested at the moment the active area was selected. We then reveal the Soviet unit, which shows the Soviet defense strategy of heroes, and the defense factor of the Soviet unit, which in this case is 5. We consult the appropriate chart on the player aid to see the effects of the defense strategy involved. After combat is resolved, we will need to reduce our morale by 1 unless there is a repulse or overrun result. The Soviet unit's defense strategy is applied during the combat resolution that follows, but is applied only once during the action round that the Soviet unit is first revealed. We will now resolve combat. We will use these tables found on the player aid to calculate the total attack value of the Germans and the total defense value of the Soviets, and then resolve combat. We first determine our lead attacking unit and note the attack factor, which in this case is 5. Note that the lead unit is at risk of being eliminated if we lose the battle. We then place the support markers into the area. We will place one air support unit and one artillery support unit. The number of support markers allocated to any one combat resolution may not exceed the number of attacking German units. Also, a maximum of only one air support marker can be placed in an area during combat resolution. We will now calculate the final attack and defense values before rolling the dice. Our attack factor from our lead unit is 5. We add +1 for each additional unit to the lead unit. In this case, we have 3 additional units, which gives us a +3 modifier. One artillery support marker gives us a +2 attack value modifier, and the air support allows us to roll 1 die and deduct that amount from the Soviet defense. Since we have 3 or more units attacking from the same division, we receive a +1 divisional integrity bonus. We also receive a +1 modifier since our morale is currently above 9 on the morale track. This gives us a total attack value of 12. We will now tabulate the defense value of the Soviets. The defense factor on the Soviet unit is 5. The terrain effects modifier is +2. The Soviets do not receive a bonus for German morale since it is currently at 19. The Soviets lose 1 die value from their defense value prior to our final dice roll due to the presence of a German air support marker. The Soviets also receive a +1 modifier from the random event phase earlier this turn. This results in a total defense value of 8. Before we roll the dice and compute the final result, we must roll 1 die since there is German air support present and deduct that result from the Soviet defense value. We roll a 3, which is deducted from the current defense value of 8. This gives us a final value of 5 for the Soviet defense. The Soviet defense value can never be reduced below 0. We now roll 2 dice for each side and add the results to the current attack and defense values to obtain the final combat result. The Germans roll a total of 8, which added to the current attack value of 12 results in a final value of 20. The Soviets roll a total of 4, which added to 5 provides a final result of 9. The result of the attack depends on the difference between the attack total and the defense total. If the attack value is less than the defense total, the German attack was repulsed and there is no effect on the Soviet unit. If the attack value equals the defense value, the result is a stalemate. There is no effect on the Soviet unit, and the German units are flipped over to their spent side. Since our final attack value was greater than the defense value, the attack was a success. The Soviet unit is removed, and the German units are flipped to their spent side. If the attack was a success, and the difference between the attack value and the defense value is greater than the original defense factor of the Soviets printed on the Soviet counter, the successful attack is also considered an overrun. In this case, the difference was 11, which is greater than the original defense factor of 5. An overrun cancels the effect of the hero's defense strategy, so we do not have to reduce our morale by 1 after combat. The last step in the combat phase is to remove the support markers from the area and place them in the Use Support Units box. So to end this combat phase, in the combat area we remove the Soviet unit, flip the German units to their spent side, and add a German control marker. We return the air support and artillery markers to the Use Support Units box. We adjust the record track to show we now control 10 areas instead of the initial 9. Finally, we determine if the Germans or Soviets have won an automatic victory. Since the Germans do not occupy all 50 areas and German morale is more than 0, neither side has won an automatic victory. We then proceed to activate any additional areas to move units and/or initiate combat. After we complete activating all of the areas we choose, it is time for the end phase. In the end phase, we return all spent units to their fresh side. We then reduce the morale by 1 on the morale track. And finally, we move the turn marker to turn 2. The turn track reminds us that we will receive reinforcements at the beginning of the next turn. This concludes the sample turn. The rulebook has optional rules for greater historical realism and play balance, including the effect of rubble in urban areas and even the inclusion of Pavlov's house. There is also a factory district scenario, which is 5 turns long and covers the second great effort by the Germans from October 14 to October 31, 1942. Let's review the victory and loss conditions. There are 3 ways the game can end. The Germans win an automatic victory if they control all 50 areas at the end of any combat phase. The Soviets win an automatic victory if German morale is 0 at the end of any combat phase. If an automatic victory has not been achieved by the start of the end phase on turn 9, the Germans win an operational victory if they occupy at least 40 areas and at least one of those is a heavy urban area. This concludes this review of Stalingrad, Advance to the Volga, 1942. Visit us at these sites and don't forget to leave a comment about your experience with this game, or let us know what game you'd like to see reviewed. And if you'd like to experience something more exciting than renting a room in Pavlov's house, stick around for our disclaimer. Coming up next.